longer. So if an author is good, you should listen to him. And I think it's if nothing else, it's a great piece of literature. I don't believe that's where it ends. I believe it does come from a higher authority, but do yourself a favor, check that out, and you will. I think you'll be amazed, entertained, and you'll understand how a lot of that stuff is connected with the world already. You'll say, "Oh, that came from the Bible? Wow!" Because you got to remember, like when the back in the day, even before Jesus' time, like the Jews, their church was the government. They tithed 10% to the church, and the other 20% went to the government because it was a theocratic government. And you have what was done then is still done today. You have the 12 disciples, and then that comes from Moses, the way he set up the law, because he was pretty much the giver of the law, so to speak. And then he had the 12. Everything is in 12s, when it came to certain aspects of the law, and then you have the different 12 tribes and blah blah blah. But anyway, today that's how we get the 12 jurors. It all comes from back then, which is interesting. I always like, even Passover, Easter, it comes from when back in the day the angel of the death, I guess, was coming looking for people's firstborn, put the blood of the lamb over, which is a sign that you put Jesus covering you, and the angel of death will pass you by. But what's ironic, if it was a story, it would not be celebrated today, because nobody will do that for a lie. What if they know it's a promise and somebody's lying, like, oh, this happened, but if people know it didn't happen and they would have known it didn't happen, they wouldn't carry it out. But the fact that they still carry out the stories, and there's a growth from when people said this happened, and there are always witnesses. I guess one thing that's interesting about the Bible is everything that happened, it's not in a land far, far away that nobody knows. This was people that were documented even in the secular writings. The kings were kings, the lands were lands, and these were historical people. There is more evidence. In fact, there's probably 10,000 times more evidence that Jesus existed than Michelangelo, or not Michelangelo. What was it? Socrates existed. We know for a fact Socrates existed. There is more evidence that Jesus existed, a lot more, by a lot of different people. So that part of it's interesting. Not that I'm trying to convert anybody. I just, it's just, I want to make sure that people know that, sure, there are people that check their brains at the door when they believe something, but people also are convinced in what they believe, and I have to be honest with you, I have to be convinced to stay. I would not stay a religious person if I did feel like I was starting to go down that dogmatic road where you believe everything hook, line, and sinker. I will change my mind in an instant on a subject. I'll probably change it back when I find out more evidence. I'll kind of go wherever it goes, but thus far it's led me to my beliefs. And may my beliefs change later on. Hopefully, I will be smart enough to change my beliefs if information changes. I don't think it will, because there are not many in science. When you have a big catastrophic change, it's huge. But there are not a lot of changes in religion. In science, you always have these changes. You look at a science book that's 30 years old, it's obsolete. The science book that I went to high school, what is it? Pluto was a planet. Now it's a moon. I mean, science constantly changes its belief. There are these big, drastic changes. And not to say a Christian doesn't believe in science, but a Christian believes in good science. The science that is observed in a lab or witnessed in nature. But when we get into the science that is led by a lot of, I guess, you have people that are very philosophical, and they believe kind of spiritual things. Maybe that's as close as they get to God, and that stuff changes all the time. And you can't have that if you change your what you believe, your big beliefs. If it's changing every so many years, maybe you need to look for a different source for what you're throwing your life after, what you're following. And in Christianity, there hasn't been a lot of big changes. In fact, very subtle changes. But for the most part, everything that's been put out, the essentials, are still, they don't contradict each other. And that's helped me to say, hey, I'm on the right path. But you got to be careful. If there's always this huge change, maybe it's not the best thing to put your all your eggs in that basket. And that's all I'm saying. Not that I'm right, not that you're wrong. I'm just saying that we need to lay everything out and be honest about it, and not be so emotional. If somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Brent, Christians don't believe in science. They're a bunch of idiots. They're leaning on a crutch. And, I'll say, okay, that's fine, but let's talk about it. And if we could talk for an hour, and not be emotional, I think that's great. If we could just discuss why we believe what we believe. A lot of people can't do that. And I'm not just talking about Democrats either. A lot of people that get really emotional about stuff, I can't stand it, because it's like, can't we just talk about what we believe? We got minds. Can't we use our minds and grow without being emotional? And like my daddy's Jehovah's Witness, and I would love to talk to him about biblical truths and this, that, and the other, but I can't. He gets too emotional because he feels trapped, he feels cornered, and I don't mean to try to trap him, but I think if you follow a lie, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of energy, you will get tired. But if you're following what you believe to be the truth, it's easy, because I don't feel cornered, because if you convince me that I'm wrong on an issue, boy, I'll look into it, and I will try to make the best decision with the information I have. So it's not very wearing. In fact, it's the opposite. You want to talk about it. You want to try to convince people if you believe you have something that if you have food and you believe people are starving, and you have a warehouse full of food, you don't say, oh, I'm too tired to hand it out. No, you want to hand it out. So basically it's more of, don't be dogmatic, because it's wearing on yourself. You're going to get tired. And also, if I felt like I was believing something just because I want to be right, we're all probably going to have a shade of that. But if that becomes a big percentage of your, of who you are, people, they tend to, they'll see through that, and they'll see it in you, and they'll think less of you, and it's ironic, is we all want to stand our ground and argue our point, because we don't want that person to think that we're wrong. Well, that person is going to think ill of you by not at least saying, fair enough, it's a good point. But if you're just arguing it for the sake of arguing, that person is not going to value your opinion. And then later on, when somebody's looking for an opinion, guess who they're not going to ask? Your name's not going to be thrown in the hat. And I love it when people look to me for an opinion, whether it's at my Bible study or just, and I got, I've always worked with everybody, atheists, younger kids, and I love it when they come up and they ask advice about their kids or this, that, and the other. And the only reason I have that is because I've always tried to offer my honest opinion, and where I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Where I want to know something, I don't try to wing it. At least I try not to. I'm getting better at it, but let's make our lives more interesting and listen to other people that if we don't know something, let's say, wow, you're interesting too. And people are interesting, it's you got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's so you could listen to music and eat. All right, guys, talk to you later. Okay, it's 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you could listen and not speak as much. All right. Are you listening, honey?